name is Henrietta Raven Dial-Stanley. I am an Indigenous woman and a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. I have grown up in the Piedmont area my entire life and currently reside in Kernersville, North Carolina. I am a senior at UNC Greensboro, majoring in consumer apparel and retail studies with a concentration in apparel product design. I am also an intern at Contour Brands for Lee Jeans as their male and female tops design intern. Along with that, I am an Indigenous artist, and so I use my creativity to design our traditional clothing. I do Native American beadwork along with graphic designing as well. And I am also an activist and an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women and that entire movement. And so I also use my education and my networks and as an ambassador to bring awareness to that issue. I am a proud member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, which is originally from the Pembroke, Lumberton, Robeson County area. So that's pretty much where the majority of my family reside at. Although back in the 70s, my grandparents moved to the High Point, Piedmont area and lived in Greensboro for the majority of my mother's life. And so I kind of like grew up in this Piedmont area. I actually grew up in Kernersville, and that's where I moved back to. But and one of the things like I explained in the email prior is I've had just such a close connection to Greensboro because of the Native community. Because you'll know, like, I think it's a part of not just in our DNA, but our culture is Indigenous people have this sense of connectiveness and we have to stick together. So when my grandparents moved out of Robeson County and moved away from their families and homes and they came to this area, they needed to find other people that were like them. And so, of course, the Guilford Native American Association was a very big part of that. And so, so many of my external family that I know, I kind of know from them and from that Guilford County community and area. So Greensboro has almost been my second home, if that makes sense. But as I mentioned prior, I've always had like a fascination for art and just a true respect for artists and how people have this innate ability to gain inspiration and use that and have messages, and they're created so aesthetically and beautifully in all different mediums of art. And so that was something like I always understood, like that's not a textbook thing that they teach you in class, but nobody had to tell me. I always understood and appreciated it. So I was in every art class imaginable from kindergarten, the first steps I took in a school atmosphere, all the way up to my high school years. I was always in art class. That was my favorite subject, anything I got to do. So I grew up trying different things like painting and pottery and sketching and just all different kinds of atmospheres. And I've recently dabbled in like graphic designing, which has been so successful for me. But just through those like small little paths in my life have kind of led me here. And so, of course, when I was in high school, that's when I really started to take on my own persona as an artist and what that meant to me. And so, my biggest thing, and this is what, and I can send you my portfolio as well. I have a digital portfolio, it's a website that I can send you for more of a reference. But my biggest passion is I want to use my art to tell my story as an Indigenous person. And many people have their own ways of doing so, and I choose to do so through my art. And so I've been beading for almost 10 years now, ever since I was about 14 years old. And from there, that kind of stemmed into sewing because in our culture, we have so many seamstresses in our families, and I don't even think we appreciate that or realize that because our regalias, they cannot be bought at Walmart. They cannot be ordered online. Like they are the most premium aspect of couture in the Indigenous culture. And I use that term couture because if you know the connotation of it, I feel like there's no better word to really show the skills that our people have for our regalias. And I'm sure that that can be related in many other cultures. And so I was always fascinated with that and fascinated with the time and the labor, and every stitch has a prayer given to, our young ones in the next generation, to, with every dance that we do and everything like that. It's just so sentimental. And like, even for myself, I make all of my regalias now and all of my dresses. And I always say that, and this might sound crazy, but when I do so, I will have this idea in my mind, or I always like to say it's a vision from the creator, and he's kind of guiding me, and it doesn't leave my mind. Like, it stays with me, and I have to draw it out. I have to design it. I have to get some kind of fabric to a sewing machine. I have to do it, for it to really play out, or it will drive me crazy. And I just have this strong passion for it. So that started about going on almost 2 years now. And also, that's kind of what stemmed my major, which is consumer apparel and retail studies with a concentration in apparel product design. So I've been able to use my sewing abilities and my artistic abilities and kind of like intertwine that in my culture. And you'll hear me reference that a lot. And so, of course, any class assignment I would have in school, in college, that geared towards my major, and they would give me a project, like, for example, my final project, and we have to design garments. Well, they're going to be indigenous inspired. And so I have the opportunity now. I'm working on a garment, two garments that I'm designing from scratch and then making, that are going to be kind of contemporary fashion wear, or an elegant take on native traditions and things like that. So that's always been exciting. And so back in March, I had the privilege of starting at Contour Brands, which I am now a lead tops intern for. And so that's where I'm currently working now. Have to give a lot of credit to one of my very first mentors, which is Miss Tabitha Jacobs. And she also resides in the Greensboro area and is a member of my tribe as well. She actually is the owner of her own business, which is Creative Natives Lumbee Artist. And so she does a vast majority of things such as beadwork, just indigenous jewelry making in general, Native American regalias that we make that are custom ordered. And also, she's dabbled in like contemporary Native wear as well. So, like, ways that we can express our indigeneity through clothing that isn't always in a ceremony or at a powwow, which is so amazing. So, she's actually the one that pretty much taught me how to sew for the first time when I was in high school, and also sat me down with her two daughters and taught us how to bead. So I actually started working under her business for a couple years once I had got to par where I could start like making my beadwork and then sharing it with others to love and enjoy and selling it and things like that, until about a year ago I kind of started my own business that I'm working with now, where I'm doing like custom graphic commissions as well as beadwork and things like that. I'm like really obsessed with a lot of native designers because I kind of love like their take on, and especially like you can kind of see their tribes kind of influence into their art. And one is Bethany Yellowtail, and she lives in Los Angeles, and I believe she is Cheyenne, and she's a member of another tribe as well, but she uses like those specific, and she has like a very, I want to say, high end contemporary native clothing line, and she uses her tribal designs, because that's one thing you'll notice among different tribes. We are each tribe is very unique, and designs that you might see on the East Coast are going to be different from designs out in the plains. Like the Navajos and the Apaches and the Anishinaabes, they're all different artistic designs that are reflected in our ceremonial wear or in our regalias. And so I love her take on it. Winston Paul, it's actually a brand, is another one, and I think it's Dene based in Arizona, and they do a lot of just like, they take the Navajo style ceremonial garments and very traditional garments and then just make them so elegant and avant-garde and just so amazing. And so that's kind of my goal. I eventually do want to be my own designer and have a line or a collection of native inspired garments from a Native American, in its authenticity, but more so focusing on Southeastern Indigenous peoples, and not so much like my tribe, but in the Southeastern region, because our designs and our aesthetics are going to be a bit more unique. It really is, and not to sound cliche, but there's definitely is a sense of diversity and like I even feel it on the campus of UNCG. Like, not only are you allowed to be who you are, but you're encouraged. Like anything that the Native American Student Association did on campus, which I was a member of for all of my 4 years in college, that we did to teach or to campaign or to talk about indigenous culture, we were very much encouraged, and the chancellor had our back with everything that we did. And so I definitely feel like just in the city in general, like I love to see the different murals. And there's two murals painted by, I want to say, um, Aboriginal artist, and one is actually a painting. And gosh, I'm gonna have to give you the exact location if you haven't seen it already, but it's a painting of Madison Davenport, who is a former Miss Lumbee and Teen Miss Lumbee. So it's on the side of a bridge, and it's a mural of her face. And then there's also a mural of the Lumbee pinecone patchwork. And then off of Battleground in that area, there's a huge mural on the side of a building of Tecumseh Jones, who is, I believe, from the Tuscarora tribe in Robinson County. And just to see those, it's like that. I love going there because it's like that's my home away from home. So even though I am 3 generations removed from my tribal territory, I still have very close connections and ties to it. And seeing that little bit in Greensboro definitely makes me feel like this is a place that I fit in, but also a place that I feel like people are accepting to difference and to change and to new. They're accepting of that. They're not in this box where it's like, well, I grew up knowing that Native Americans, they kind of died off in the 1800s, and if they were ever alive or real, they're back in Oklahoma somewhere on the Trail of Tears, and they're living in teepees in their loincloths. Like, as poor as our education system portrays my people, I feel like it is my obligation to educate in the best way that I can to those that will listen about my heritage. And I also feel like there are people that will listen in Greensboro. I also love the urban aspect of it because an urban native is very different from a native that grew up in their tribal community. And I was always kind of discouraged of that. But the older I get, I learn to own it, because I've always been in rooms and in spaces where I was the only native in the room. So my mother, the very first Miss Indian North Carolina, made it very apparent that me and my twin brother knew who we were and knew our heritage, because we were always battled with that and with people questioning that. And so I never had a question of my cultural identity because it was instilled in my heart since I came out of my mother's womb. And I give credit to that being in an urban area, because I've always had to demand my seat at the table, not only as a woman, but as a person of color. And I've always had to demand the respect for my heritage and for my culture. And so now I kind of use that as an opportunity to thrive rather than a disadvantage, because I'm not like everybody else. And in 2018, the Greensboro City Council, myself and a lot of other Native youth went before the City Council, and they proclaimed October 12th as Indigenous Peoples Day, or the original Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day. So that was one of the things. And we even said at the council meeting, Greensboro has a way to go, but they're making a lot of positive strides. I have got graduation coming up, and whether or not I will get a ceremony in the official sense, I am still planning on making a grand appearance of, my just accomplishment. So I'm currently beating my cap, and which is something that is common. Like because one of the things I always like to highlight, we have the lowest graduation rates and the highest dropout rates in education across the board of Native Americans. So it's always something to be commemorated for when any Native American, goes to such high esteems in education. So that's always something close to my heart and that I take pride in. So I'm working on now embellishing my cap in my traditional adornment, and so I'm hand beading it, and then I will be having like a stole in Eastern Woodland florals that will go down it as well, just to kind of showcase, like you might see in other cultures, like a certain flag that deems from a certain culture, things like that. And so that's what I want to do for my graduation attire. So I'm working on that. And then of course I am in my finish. So I'll graduate in December, and I'm finishing my last semester at UNCG, and I just have one class left, and it's a studio class. So it was one that I mentioned before. And so in this class, it's pretty much like the whole class is a final project. So in August, when I think the class started, until December when I graduate, we are designing two garments. So it started out as, gaining inspiration, putting together a mood board, which I put and used some of my native designers that I was inspired by, and some of indigenous beadwork that I love, and put into a mood board to kind of get an idea of the look that I wanted to cultivate. And then I started designing it, and I'm learning 3D designing as well, virtual designing. I'm actually certified in a 3D design software that Contour uses. And so kind of incorporating all those things. So now I'm working on physically putting it together. So I'll have like a female garment and a male garment, which is very new to me. I had to wait till I graduated to go all out and try the hardest stuff. But I was like, I wanted to have something to show for my 4.5 years of education and all the money spent on it. So I'm working on that. But I love like the freedom that the curriculum gives us. We kind of had a theme of sustainability. And so the way I've kind of intertwined my culture in that is, one of the things of sustainability is mass customization or mass production. And so a common thread in our culture when we're making our garments, they are one of a kind pieces. Our regalias are they're not something that's mass produced where there's a lot of waste or a lot of product. It is catered to that person. So like I've started making my brother's regalias as well. And when I make something for him, like it's very personal. We have these fit meetings where I test the garment on him, make sure it fits him perfectly. So to tie into that, there's just as least waste as possible, but it's also very personal and very sentimental. So like even in my regalia, everything down to the colors I picked have a symbolic meaning to it and represent something. I have started back my internship. So of course, due to the virus, they kind of had to cancel their internship program. And my former boss, who is absolutely amazing, I couldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for him, fought really hard to get some of the interns back. So I'm one out of 3 interns that the whole Contour Brands company has at the in the design department right now. So an average day for me is I pretty much work 9 to 5. And so I reside in male and female tops. So there's a designer that does male and female right now, because things are a little crazy in the company just because of a lot of people were let go. Times are crazy. When Contour became a publicly traded company, there wasn't that many people there to begin with, and then we lost a lot of people. So it's like everybody's kind of doing everything to help out. So when I came back, I was in like different aspects of design at Lee, helping out wherever's needed. And so now I'm kind of I work specifically with tops, which is where I started at when I came last year. So I pretty much go into the office, and I'm probably one of very few people that do. So I can be there to physically touch the garments and things like that. I have class that meets Monday for 2 hours, and because of the virus, we're split up. So it's only 6 of us in the class, and we are separated throughout the whole room. So it's a lot. It's crazy going from 4 years of college where every second and hour of my day was planned out, and I didn't stop working until about midnight, to now like then going from 6 months of being at home trying to find everything to do, which my business really kicked up then, which surprised me. It did phenomenal during the coronavirus. And then kind of getting back into the workload, it's been an adjustment. So that's what I do now. So kind of like my own art has kind of taken a backseat a little bit since I'm still getting my bearings, getting back into work. And then with my school, but I found a way to, as usual, intertwine my art into my schoolwork. So it's like I'm doing schoolwork, but is it schoolwork? Because for me, it's my art. Like there's one or two things I can do here. I can sit and drown in my own depression and do nothing, or I can use this as an opportunity where I have this abundance of free time that I haven't before and really do what I love to do, and that is grow my business through my artwork. So pretty much after that, I started just beating and making inventory, like making, and when I say like inventory, like Native American earrings and stuff like that, and selling them. I started doing like painted earrings. So I like, it really started as like me doing it for myself and just to show people, and then people loved it. So I paint as well. So I, on little wooden pieces, I painted myself in my regalia, and then I beat it around it. So when I'm in that regalia, when I'm in that dress, I have those earrings on and it's me. And people loved it. And so like over quarantine, that like really blew up, and I got orders, and I was doing, people of loved ones that had passed away and these memorial pieces in these earrings that I was beating around for people, and they were so significant, or people were getting them as gifts of others. I had one that I got to beat a longhouse, which is like for southeastern people, like for the Tuscarora tribe, and for Lumbee people as well, a longhouse is traditionally our home that we've lived in versus a teepee. We didn't have teepees over here. So like putting those little significant aspects into these earrings was just so amazing. And so from that, I feel like I started to be known for something, and that started to really kind of pop out. And then also I started learning graphic designing like on my iPad. So I do like Procreate and I draw. And so I've done like all my own marketing. I've done my own logo and things like that. Um, and from doing that, I just got a lot of orders to do other people's logos and marketings. I've got one now of a food truck, so I'm going to be doing all of their marketing for like what will be on their food truck and what will be like on their menus and things like that, and that's really grown. I have the opportunity to work on my website. So I've created my own website for my business, and then I also have a portfolio that like I submit when I'm applying to jobs and things like that to showcase what I've done previously. So it's actually been pretty rewarding. It's amazing. I kind of say it's like the sunflower that kind of creeps out of cement, like the rainbow in the storm, if you can kind of say, because during that time, my mom was working from home, my dad had got laid off, and then my brother had just graduated college, and then he's here trying to get a job in the midst of in the virus. So for a brief period of time, I pretty much had and I moved back home. So I had all my family in this same space, which hasn't been like this for at least 4 years, which was pretty amazing. I say I got to spend more time with my dad than I ever had in my whole life. Like I took on fishing. I love to fish now. I am a city girl and did not know how much I love it. But like taking on these new hobbies and just really like find these new things. Like me and my parents have a routine where every Wednesday we go out to eat, and then we watch the show Dateline on NBC to like end our night. Like that's our routine, and just taking those times to spend with your family and spend with the ones you love. And so every day, like I pretty much, and I'm a planner, so every day I did my day planned out. I woke up and I did orders. I did something for my art for myself because that's my therapy, but then also for my business, and learning the difference between my business and art for myself and for my therapy. So that was just really amazing, and that's time that, despite how awful things can be in the world right now, I'm really appreciative that I got that time. So, like I said, I got so much success in the 6 months of doing different things in my business. So, about 2 months ago, of course, perfect timing when I start back school, I wanted to grow my business and expand. So, I wanted to do like sublimation, which is, ways that you can kind of transfer images, graphic images onto t-shirts, cups, mugs. So I pretty much had this idea, and I came up with this whole um, business plan, expense report, and everything of pretty much being my own person and like making this stuff. So making my own t-shirts with my design, custom designs on it to sell. Um, and then, expanding that into like phone cases and just all kind of things, like having a phone case with my indigenous Eastern Woodland floral designs that I create on it. So I pretty much got all the equipment for it, which is very expensive, and realized that the designer and the manufacturer are two completely different jobs. I was like working myself so much to where I forgot why I wanted to start this business to begin with. And it wasn't so much for how much money can I make, but how I can teach others my culture in an authentic way. Because like I said before, my culture gets appropriated in so many ways all the time. And that was my goal, as to how I can use my culture appropriately, but also like to where other natives see like there's a person doing this and they're like me, they're indigenous. Like you always see a Caucasian designer, an African American designer, or those kind of things, but seeing another native designer, but also somebody from the East Coast, that is where my heart is, and to show that. And I felt like I was expanding my business at a premature state. And so it was more so, oh my gosh, like I got to get stuff out. I was setting myself deadlines, and then I was getting frustrated and stressed because I'm like, I'm the only one that, cares about these deadlines. I'm not making it, and I'm stressing myself out even more, to where it was bothering me like health wise, and I was having problems with like my health. And I went to the doctor, and a lot of the problems that I was having, my doctor kept saying, you're stressed, you're stressed, you're stressed. And it's one thing like for people to say like, stop stressing, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. If you can tell me, please. I do not know how to do that. So I've had to take a step back and learn like self-care and things like that. So right now I pretty much like come to terms with, I'm not ready for that yet, but also wanting to hone in what I am good at. I'm also working on redefining my style as an artist. So what sets me apart from other native artists, and what makes me unique? What is something that when you see it, I did it, it's my work, and owning that. And so I'm taking time now to re-examine that, but also doing it in an authentic way, so that I don't myself appropriate my culture, and if that makes sense, by creating things that hadn't quite been thought through in the best way, or hadn't been using the best, without using like the adequate sources to kind of say like, this is where my inspiration came from. So I've just kind of been taking a break from that and doing taking on minimal orders, but then like I said, just focusing a lot on my job and my work, my school. So I kind of have plans now to get things in a different direction in December when I graduate. And kind of my business is just like, what's the word? It's not flatlining, but it's just staying very steady right now. I don't want to lose it. Like all my hard work that I've been doing, I don't want to lose it, but I'm not there yet to keep making it grow. I'm just keep maintaining it to keep it, so that when I do graduate, I can dedicate that time. And that's honestly like, I've gained so much respect over everything that I've been through because of it. And I've learned so much. And I just have so much respect for those that are able to start their own business and things like that, because it's not easy, it's very hard. And I eventually want to take my company to be like a LLC, or like those next official steps into that. And I know that I've got a ways to go. So one, it is my medicine, it is my therapy, and my own means of healing. I have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And so through my artwork, it's helped me to kind of battle some of my greatest demons, and like give me a reason to be proud of myself, because we're our worst critics, and I will beat up and bully myself way harder and way more than anybody else can. And so my art has given me a sense of, to be proud of myself and what I do, but also in a humbling way, like not to sound cocky or conceited, but it's kind of been my self love for me. It's also my way to teach others about my culture. It's the best way I know how to. Like I said, I never loved reading, writing, science, math, any of those things. But when it came to art, like I knew that I did that. Like stuff like that just came natural for me. Even in my program, when I was learning about different concepts in the fashion industry, or like, and I definitely think it requires a critical thinker to be a designer because you have to understand, well, how is this fabric going to drape? And it's going to drape differently in a chiffon than it will in, a denim fabric or things like that. And you have to reshape your mind to look at it that way, and I've learned how to do so, but it just came so much more naturally where it was honestly like these light bulbs coming off. Like, I don't know the Pythagorean theorem to save my life, but learning these different things, I was like, yes, I got this. I can do this. And I even see me finding that same concept in my job when I was learning 3D designing for Lee and learning how Lee does things, and then how I've taken that education and using it in my own art and in my own means as a designer. So it's definitely been so much to me and something that I want to continue to be for as long as I'm able to, is to be an artist. And I've learned the older I get, I own that. And I